Hello, I am Fredo Rivera, an assistant professor of art history at Grinnell College, and I'm very excited to talk with y'all about a recent acquisition at the Grinnell College Museum of Art, prints from Jacob Lawrence's The Life of Toussaint Louverture series. Jacob Lawrence is one of the most prominent artists of the 20th century, and a seminal figure of the Harlem Renaissance. He had a long, illustrious career. His many prints and paintings often address social and political issues poignantly, and he is best known for narrative series depicting historical events or figures. He painted his most famous series, the Great Migration series, around 1941 at the age of 23. With strong, sometimes muddied color, often abstracted figures, and thoughtful compositions, Lawrence shared the story of African American migration from the U.S. South to cities in the North. These works portray a breadth of emotion, powerfully capturing the struggle of migration with compelling visual storytelling. Now, the works in our collection at Grinnell include 13 of 15 prints from the Life of Toussaint Louverture series, renditions created approximately between 1980 and 1997. These vibrant colored serigraphs are based on his original Toussaint Louverture series from 1938, which comprises of 41 tempera on paper paintings. Larger in scale, the 15 prints can be seen as providing a dynamic, abridged version of the original painting series. The screen prints are a wonderful example of an established artist, very late in their career, returning to one of their earliest works. I hope to discuss a few examples, to show the power of these prints, dynamic and beautiful in their own right. Jacob Lawrence painted the original Life of Toussaint Louverture series at the age of 21, and it was his very first narrative painting series. Having grown up in Harlem, Lawrence was part of an active, engaged black art scene. He also frequented the Schomburg Collection at the New York Public Library in Harlem, a prominent collection of black art, culture, history, and literature started by Afro-Boricua historian and writer Arturo Schomburg. These archives held a prominent place in Harlem, as artists and writers explored new ways to express the black experience. Harlem became a beacon for articulating a modern black identity. The Life of Toussaint Louverture series is explicit in narrating black modernity. The series tells the life story of the famed revolutionary leader, as well as the history of Haiti up until the eventual triumph of the Haitian Revolution in 1804. Now, one thing I really want to emphasize as we look at the Lawrence prints and discuss them in relation to the original series of paintings is the pedagogical and political value of these works. The Toussaint Louverture series is a telling of history rooted in the black experience with the intention of educating the viewer. Beyond the visual telling of history, these works complicate dominant narratives and display the struggles of black liberation with emotional and visual fervor. For example, the print titled Coachman, a serigraph from 1980, depicts a young Toussaint. This print is based on panel 8 from the original 1938 series. The 1938 painting is about 24 by 18 inches, whereas our screen print is slightly larger at 19.5 by 29.5 inches. Also differing are the titles. The titles of the prints are extracted from much longer titles in the painting series, which read as long captions. The title for this Coachman scene from the 1938 series reads, and I quote, "In early manhood his seemingly good nature won for him the coachmanship for Bayou de Libertas, 1763. His job as coachman gave him time to think how to fight slavery. During this period he taught himself to read and write." End quote. Lawrence's long titles hence associate the image with a specific time in Toussaint's life. The 1938 series is sequential, beginning with the colonization of Haiti and the introduction of slavery. In just the previous panel to Coachman, Lawrence depicts Toussaint as a child witnessing the injustices of slavery. Looking at the Coachman print, we see Lawrence place Toussaint in the foreground, to the left, with two horses thrusting forward. The landscape is abstracted. There's a very flat, almost pinkish-gray background from top to bottom. It is only through the scale of the figures, likely workers toiling in the field, that we get some sense of spatial depth. The image is framed to the lower left and right by flame-like green plants, something we see in many of the prints or paintings. This is a very playful composition, with color and form used in inventive, even rhythmic ways. The four workers in the upper right corner almost seem to be in a dance. Simple abstract shapes of singular color help form bodies in active movement. One body crouches, two of the workers hold a yellow tool, each figure is posed deliberately. as they appear to move in a seemingly ambulatory manner. Here we see the beginnings of a revolution. We also see the humanity of the workers, fundamental in the maturation of Toussaint as leader and liberator. Overall, the depiction of Toussaint throughout the series is of a heroic, thoughtful, and even dignified leader, something made evident in the print Coachman. While one could get a sense of dominion over territory from the implied hierarchy of the composition, I interpret this as a representation of solidarity. Here we see the workers of a violent plantation economy, claiming their own. Toussaint was able to eventually receive his freedom in Saint-Domingue being the colonial name for Haiti, around the age of 33, and it was the privileges he garnered within a corrupt system that allowed him to better understand the lay of the land, and later led to a major slave revolt. The majority of the panels in the Life of Toussaint Louverture series depict the Haitian Revolution, a long, complicated war which began in 1791 and ended in 1804, leading to the formation of the world's first Black Republic. Jacob Lawrence's narrative retelling of the Revolutionary War captures the planning, the battles, and the eventual capture and death of Toussaint. We see such war scenes in several of our prints. Among my favorite is the March, showing a progression of soldiers from left to right. The 1938 painting, or panel number 23 in the series of this work, is titled, quote, General Louverture collected forces at Marmalade and on October 9th, 1794, left with 500 men to capture San Miguel, end quote. Here we see the march forward into battle. Like the Coachman, figures are comprised of simple shapes and prominent color. Again, there is a sense of play and movement in this wonderfully direct, rhythmic composition. At the very foreground in the lower part of the print are plants that look like fire blades of grass. Emerging behind them is a compelling force of soldiers donning white pants and red coats, with guns placed over their shoulders. These figures form a vivid zigzag-like pattern. The vibrant movement of these figures shows an artist engaging with his modern contemporaries and using the tools of modernist painting. The brilliance of Lawrence's compositions is seen throughout the series, and perhaps becomes most apparent in works lacking human figures. Two prints in our collection are great examples of Lawrence's ingenuity: The Burning and The Flotilla. The Burning shows the capture of two towns in Artibonite. It is a simple, drastic composition of 6 modest buildings on fire in a flood of foliage. This work signifies the threat of Haiti's military to both British and French forces. On the other hand, the flotilla depicts the arrival of Napoleon's troops in 1801. The landscape is practically barren. Here we see scattered, or let's say socially distanced, ships approaching the coast with their French flags. The gray skies and haggard horizon truly provide an ominous feeling. For those interested, numerous sources exist on the Haitian Revolution, including recent scholarship that continues to expand and complicate the narratives of the revolution. In 1938, the same year Lawrence painted the Life of Toussaint Louverture series, Trinidadian historian C.L.R. James published his famous book, The Black Jacobins, which focused on the leadership of Louverture. In many ways, these prints refer to a moment when Black artists, writers, and intellectuals grappled with liberation and identity through a transnational or global lens. Haiti became very symbolic in this endeavor, as a trope of resistance dating back to its revolution. Seeing these works in person, more importantly in their proper sequence and in a gallery space, really emphasizes their power, both as a pedagogical tool and a form of beautiful, thoughtful political expression. Jacob Lawrence brings the Haitian Revolution to life and becomes a revolutionary artist and storyteller in his own right. I want to close our discussion of Lawrence with the piece de résistance in our collection, what is undeniably the most famous work in the series. General Toussaint Louverture depicts the leader in profile. A green background contrasts his red, revolutionary garb. The print is dynamic and visually graphic, much like the original painting. The portrayal is located in the middle of the painting series, as panel number 20 out of 41, and is titled as follows. Quote, General Toussaint Louverture, statesman and military genius, esteemed by the Spaniards, feared by the English, dreaded by the French, hated by the planters, and reverenced by the blacks, end quote. I love this title. It ends stating Toussaint is reverenced by the blacks, suggesting a form of exaltation for a leader who defied odds and challenged the prevailing system of slavery. Here, the dignified leader looks to the left in thoughtful contemplation. Like the march, there's an implication of a movement forward, but here such motion is captured more in theory than in practice. That is, in this portrait, we focus on the consciousness of the leader, rather than his soldiers going to battle. This representation of Haiti's revolutionary leader draws directly from 19th century images of Toussaint, most prominently a now missing drawing and its derivative engravings by Nicolas Eustache Morin. The fabulous art historian Erica Moaya James, who has written about 19th century portrayals of Louverture and other Haitian leaders, suggests that a closer study of these works, especially when within their historical context, challenges disciplinary methodologies. And she writes that 19th century Black Caribbean portraiture, quote, articulates through genre and context the need for creolized methods to reflect the complexity of culturally specific form within global imaginaries, end quote. Erica suggests that we need to analyze from a different vantage point, with revolutionary Haiti garnering a generative position, one that, she describes, quote, require art historians and curators to rethink assumptions of value and innovation enshrined by the linear temporalities of Western art history, end quote. While chronological in form, I like to think Jacob Lawrence's The Life of Toussaint Louverture series works similarly, asking for, to quote Erica, creolized methods, or a means of analysis that brings Haiti and its revolution into our contemporary sphere. While Jacob Lawrence was drawing from modern artists visually, his work concerned Black audiences and presented new creolized means to understand history and express diaspora. This marriage of modern art and Black history is especially highlighted in the prints, which mimic the paintings, but feel removed from the historical sequence of the original series. For me, these colorful screen prints are dynamic proclamations, works of visual beauty that attest to the importance of the Haitian Revolution. These are extremely exciting prints to have in our collection. I can't help but think of their ties to other works in our collection, such as Francisco Goya's Disasters of War series, which also depicts Napoleonic invasions. These works will also provide new teaching and research opportunities across the college. Lastly, these prints connect to a current project here at Grinnell, Haitian Art: A Digital Crossroads, which is a collaboration with the Waterloo Center for the Arts in Iowa, which houses the largest public collection of Haitian art. Working closely with Waterloo, the Grinnell College Libraries, and our new Clear Mellon postdoctoral fellow in data curation for Haitian visual arts, Petrushka Moise, are working on a digital platform for Haitian art. In many ways, our project begs us to look at exemplars such as Jacob Lawrence, who drew upon the archives, books, and art collection of the Schomburg Collection to construct a brilliant, engaging narrative, not just about Haiti's most famed revolutionary leader, but also about Black modernity and freedom.